He said, because nothing in this world can save your life. Because life is not meant to be saved, Joe. It's meant to be spent. And what you and I have to ask ourselves is how we're going to spend the rest of ours.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, brought to you by 180 TAC. Get out there and have some fun.
Welcome to this week's Life Outside the Box episode. This is Mason, and you might have noticed something a little different about the show. We have a new logo. And that is not your eyes deceiving you. That is, in fact, our new logo. How cool is that? It will soon be on all our other platforms, and that will be the official symbol of this show. And pretty soon, for Christmas time, there will be available t-shirts and stickers, a couple pieces of merchandise with that logo on it. So if you're interested, send us an email, info@adventuresportspodcast.com, or get in touch on Facebook or wherever, and let us know if you're interested in something with that logo on it. Also, we've been getting a lot of messages from people who said, hey, this has been on my mind for a year or months about someone I know who would make a good guest on the show. And we figure there's probably a lot more of you out there that know someone that might make a very interesting guest. If you do, get in touch with us. info@adventuresportspodcast.com or on Facebook, Instagram, like I said before. We're always looking for great guests, and if you know a good storyteller, if you know someone with an interesting story to tell, get in touch. We'd love to have them on. And for today's episode, it's an interview with Joe Kurmaskie, the Metal Cowboy. He is an excellent writer and writes some of the most entertaining books on adventure travel that I've ever read. It's a very honest interview, so we hope to continue that. We'd never want to shy away from what real life is like and how our adventure sports and our passions, they're not always buttoned up real nice, and, you know, life is like a country song. There's a lot of crap that goes on. And so this interview, it was really refreshing for me, really honest, really open, and I really hope you enjoy it as well. Welcome to the show. Today we have another one of my favorite authors who's written some of my favorite books, Joe Kurmaskie. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be back. I know we've hung out and talked before, and thanks for reaching out and let people know the state of the Metal Cowboy universe.
That's right. Yeah, and so Joe's, he's also known pretty officially, probably more so, as the Metal Cowboy, the Metal Cowboy. You have extensive experience of biking, probably close to 250,000 miles at this point?
Yeah, I put in another 40 this weekend on Mount Rainier. I don't always wear a kit, but when I do wear a kit, Mason, I like to have lots of pictures taken of me climbing 4,000 vertical feet on gravel roads around Mount Rainier.
You got to make sure people know it actually happened, right?
That's right. Hey, so yeah, I've had bike's been very, very good to me, Mason, as you know. I'm 8 books in. I have a 9th book coming out, my first historic nonfiction. You know, my books most of them are episodic memoir, travel adventure. They've been called, it's slandering a literary titan, but they've been called a modern day Mark Twain on 2 wheels. And, Twain's dead, so he can't defend himself on that. So I'll go ahead and take the compliment. They're just stories about getting in all kinds of good trouble around the globe, and the hook is that I'm passing through each place on a bicycle, and it's just been, I misspent my youth on a bike, and it was a boon for me. It turned into a career. The first book, Metal Cowboy, found its life through a series of newspaper articles. I was a newspaper man for about 7 years. And that was the way in. The sports writer had a nervous breakdown in this town, and I had space to fill. I was really the entertainment editor, and so I jumped over and I had this just massive, sprawling on the road Kerouac type of thing tentatively called Metal Cowboy that wasn't going anywhere. But when I broke it down to 1,500, 2,000 word columns every week in the newspaper, it won the New Mexico Press Association Award and then went on to win the National AP Outdoor Column Award. And then the publishers came knocking. And so that's how it all started. You know, if you look at me, I look more like an aging surfer, Mason. I do not look like a metal cowboy. But when you read the book, you figure out how I got the name right there in the first chapter.
Yeah, I remember reading that story. Wasn't it some guy pulled up next to you in a truck or something?
No, this one was close. There was a rambling old cowboy himself, an old rancher in a long coat and tobacco stains and cow spittle. He tapped his cane. He turned out he was a blind old rancher. He tapped his cane over the bike and myself at the stoplight. He stepped back and through a ruin of teeth, he says, metal cowboy. Because, you know, he could only feel me. He couldn't see me, Mason. So he felt the bicycle was my trusted old steed and the asphalt my dusty trail. And so that's how it stuck. And, you know, it's now been optioned for a cable TV series, Metal Cowboy. And the new book, Lightning the Saddle, that's coming out has been optioned for a movie. So, you know, it's amazing what one old rancher's words could to tag on me, and it's gone all these years.
That's incredible, man. So there's a lot of people that listen to this show that have done some incredible things and have great stories. And I've kind of realized through your books that when I think back on things that have happened to me, I'm like, yeah, that's a story right there. If I was Joe, I'd know how to turn that into a sellable story. But, you know, you make it the everyday of travel and of adventure seem super just extraordinary, first off. And also, you've been able to build a career. You said you've written 8 books. I've read about 4 of them. And, Metal Cowboy was the first one. My mother gave it to me right after my first bike trip. And I was still in college. I had 2 years left, and I absolutely loved it. And so because of that book, I decided to do one trip up the East Coast from Maine to Florida.
Yes.
And, yeah, I just absolutely love the stories and have been a huge fan. So this is cool to have you on.
Well, and you know, I'm just another Joe in this world, but, you know, I do a couple things competently, and one of them is, you know, I write like a literary house on fire, and I can tell a damn good story. And the reason is because I try and find the universal in the specific, and I try and when I'm out on the road, I'm not writing like a journalist. I take notes in the evening, some shorthand sometimes, but mostly I'm out looking for adventure and connection with people and places and events and activities. I think that's how you get a good story. You don't go out looking to manufacture a story because it won't come. You know, that washed pot kind of theory. And there's everybody's got to pull it out of them and pull it out of yourself. And some of them just fall in your lap, and some of them you see later on after you've lived it.
So where did you get those storytelling chops? Have you always had them or tapped into them later when you began writing? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I found a book the other day that I won in 3rd grade. I was telling stories, not even 3rd grade. I think I was 6 years old. I won a storytelling contest in Pittsburgh in our local library summer program, and the storytelling's always been there. You know, I think we all get gifts, limited. You know, and sometimes we don't take advantage of them because we think we have that Buddhist saying, you know, the challenge is we think we have time. And not to get too heavy on everybody, but I, about 4 years ago, really faced that thing, not that whole question, metaphoric sense, but in a literal sense. I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder called hemochromatosis, which is too much iron in your organs and tissues. When the mutation flips on in your 40s, everything beyond your daily allowance, you start building up in your organs and tissues. And it's not a blood disorder, so you can't just Keith Richards it and get a blood transfusion. You got to slow but surely have phlebotomies every week for about a year and a half. And when they found my numbers, Mason, the doc said, well, I don't know how you're standing up. You should be dead. My numbers were up around 3,000, my iron content, when it should have been about 50. And I just felt a little tired. I thought it was middle age. And I rode my bike to the treatments. I would ride my bicycle, and then I go coach volleyball afterwards. And I did really well. We got my iron down. And then feeling good, feeling like, I beat this thing. And then just one day in the summer, about a year and a half ago, because this opens you up to autoimmune type of encephalitis and other things that can get you when you're in that kind of compromised state of all these bleeds. In the end, I got something that tried to kill me, Mason, and it took me down I was in the hospital 6 or 7 times. I couldn't swallow very well. I lost 35 pounds. I got down to only being able to ride my bike around the block and just weak as a kitten. It did not look good for me. I was sleeping about 2 or 3 hours a night, and then the doctors tried to put me on the thing that killed Prince and Tom Petty, the cousin of opioids, Ativan. They were both on it, and that stuff is just big pharmaceutical trying to kill people. The dose they put me on before I realized what it was highly addictive and a maintenance dose for most people, because you can't get off it because you have to step down off it. So in the end, it's like coming off of heroin 10 or 15 times over the course of 3 or 4 months. So most people don't beat it, but I just said, I've got kids, I've got a life, I got a new book that I haven't finished writing, and it's about somebody who was being lost to the sands of time herself, a cyclist. So I felt that she'd already passed. I said, if I died, then Evelyn Hamilton of Lightning in a Saddle would have died twice. And so all these reasons, I got myself off of this Ativan, and I'm not doing a plug for CBD oil, but CBD oil and some dietary changes, lifestyle changes saved me, Mason. I'm back to climbing 4,000 vertical feet in Mount Rainier, and I'm back. And I finished the book, and I'm out doing speaking engagements for it. I've come back with a different sense of purpose. Not that I didn't already have a live out loud, live every day moniker, as you know from reading my books, Mason, but I came back with the sense of wanting to leave some more legacy and doing it now. So I got recruited by a nonprofit for the whole 16-city Washington County out here just on the west side of Portland that really desperately needs bike culture and bike touring and bike safety and all of that. And so I'm their executive director as of last May. We bring programs like Adopt a Bike to vets and low-income families and children. We have a community cycling repair shop. We're planning to be the Goodwill of bikes and put those in a number of the other cities in the county. We have a summer camp for kids on bikes called Saddle Up Adventures, and we're expanding that to Big Kids Camp, Average Person Olympics Week, Diabetes Management and Prevention Week. So we're doing all kinds of programs. And we're also doing an open streets festival like they have in Portland called Sunday Parkways. So I'm busy, I'll rest when I'm dead. I had plenty of rest when I was in the hospital and not sure whether I was going to, it was just about breathe in, breathe out then. And so the way some people who dodge a car accident or life-scaring moment will have a sense of gratitude for a little while, I kind of have a permanent gratitude mindset these days, Mason. It's a nice way to walk around in your days because it's just about happy to be here and how can I help?
Right. I didn't know that. I had read a little bit about that early on, but I didn't know it was so intense for you.
Yeah, it was to be or not to be. And, I played it down at the time and, it was a hard walk. But my doctors said at the end, I got a new doctor, and he said, boy, we did everything to try and kill you, but I guess you're hard to kill. Friends of mine made a hashtag T-shirt that says hard to kill.
Hard to kill. Is that your next book?
Putting that on my resume. The next book, I got a couple of new books coming out, but I don't think you've read the latest that came out a year and a half or so ago, right before, I went down circling the drain there for a little while. It was called A Guide to Falling Down in Public, Finding Balance on and Off the Bicycle. And that one got a starred review in the New York Times. They called it, now I don't know about this, Mason, but I go with this as a positive review. They said it was a literary hurricane. We had to shelter in place until it was over.
I would take that as a compliment, man.
Hurricanes, at least I'm doing some damage, I guess is what I figure.
You're making a dent.
So, there's a million ways to skin a cat, Mason, and the cat's not going to like any of them. So I kind of learned that through this illness and this stretch that, life takes turns, but, you either lay down and die or you get back up and find some good stuff to do with the time that remains.
By now, you certainly know who Bent Gate is. That's for a great reason. Bent Gate Mountaineering has been sponsoring the Adventure Sports Podcast almost from the beginning, and we really appreciate that. They've made it possible for all the great shows to continue coming your way. We want to say thanks by reminding you to go to them for your backcountry gear. If you live in Colorado, then just stop by their store in Golden. If not, go to bentgate.com. They have what you need, from the latest ultralight gear to the tried and true classics for climbing, hiking, and camping, like Arc'teryx, Hilleberg, Nemo, Western Mountaineering, and many more. Need advice? They have you covered there too. Their staff are passionate adventurers who can offer help from their own experiences. Bentgate also hosts lots of events and speakers. Check out their website to see the schedule and to see all of their products. Help take care of the Adventure Sports Podcast by getting your gear from Bentgate Mountaineering.
Do you feel like that time, because you seem to be pretty energetic and pretty positive, just rearing to go. How did that affect that personality? Did you find times where you just did not feel like yourself for extended periods of time?
You've hit it on the head, Mason. I didn't feel like myself for about 11 months. I was not the Metal Cowboy. I went to ground. I just was trying to get by. I had canceled events and performances, and the only thing that stayed, even through the illness and the drugs that the hospital tried to kill me with and all of it, the only thing that stayed was my ability to write. And it was brutal, but I wanted to finish that book just in case my day was up. I'm just so thankful that my day, that it wasn't my number, and that I get to spend time on the bike and off the bike and with my kids and trying to do some good and really continue to make those connections that I've tried to do all through my life. I believe in not just it being another day, but being a day where you have some meaningful interaction with people. And you either a day where you're the answer to someone's prayers or they're the answer to yours, and just a chance to laugh a little more and tell some more stories. Boy, I've had there's a good number of stories that haven't been told yet, and they build up every day. I like to think myself as there's a vault. It's not as thick as Prince's vault, but there's a vault of stories that I still need to get out there.
Absolutely. That is crazy. You never know what someone's going through. You just don't know how you're going to come out on the other side either. I mean, how deeply were your kids affected?
Well, my kids are doing just wonderful. And what it did, though, Mason, and I don't know if this is the place or time, but it ended my marriage. And that was really hard for me. I mean, that was the hardest part of the whole thing. A 25-year marriage ended because of... I just wasn't Superman anymore for a while there, and you never know how somebody's going to take another person's illness. There's no animosity. There's no. It's a heartbreak, but you have to move on in your life, and so there's that.
Yeah, no, man, that's real life, dude. It's we don't like to shy away from the realness of pursuing your passions on this show, because it's not every aspect of it is wonderful and pretty. It's not a Disney movie, that's for sure.
Well, it's not. Unfortunately, mine wasn't a Stephen King novel either. It turns out that, there's a lot of happiness and memories and life back there. I'm not one of those guys that's going to rewrite history. I try and be honest and sincere in my books. I hope that comes through that you've read. And, you can only move forward and get up. And I did get up, and I am the guy you read in those books. I'm back. And I was that guy underneath while I was ill, but it was hard, Mason. I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't noises and light, and it was under all conditions. The doctor said they don't know how I was still here. Now I'm back. I'm back and feeling great and weathering those emotional storms. It does put things in perspective relationship wise when you're just happy to be here, and so you approach things. I've never been a materialistic person, so I've never put a lot of grip on stuff, and so I'm having a good time with it. I've got meaningful work. I've got a healthy relationship with another person now. And the kids are wonderful. The new relationship I'm in, she's a cyclist and a writer. It's nice to be able to, get on your bike with someone else and just ride mile for mile and just still be here.
Yeah. So Joe, you've been able to create a pretty, well, seemingly a solid career. You might say otherwise behind closed doors, and I know exactly how that is. But how has this career been for you? And has it grown over time? Has it been a real grind? Has it suffered, especially with that health crisis? I'm sure there was a time you just could not push your brand. Delve into that a little bit.
Yeah. You know what? Like I said, the bicycle's been very, very good to me. It's everything, no matter what you do in this world. There's days where, you'd rather not be whoever you've become brand wise. You just, tired of it. But there's been very few of those days because I've gotten a chance to do two things I love to do, which is bicycle and write. And so I'm a real happy man on that front. And the career grew. I mean, it's the houses it bought the houses. It paid kids through school. It's been a career, and it's evolved in that, books have become less. I still have a big following, so I still sell a lot of books, but I tend to sell myself more in events and shows. And I've built a one-man show with my sort of storytelling and visuals and props. I'm not Carrot Top or anything, but, it's an actual show. You don't come in and hear you read behind a podium. I stage, and it's sort of a mixture of comedy and satire and pathos. And so between the magazine writing and the books being optioned and all the performances and the book sales that come with those performances, I've been able to have a really nice career. Now, when I got sick, my career runs on energy. And so that was brutal. That was a big hit. I've weathered that hit, but things change. You have to sell houses when you're in the middle of a relationship ending, a long time marriage, and you got to think about the children. We've got 4 of them. We're not Catholic. We're just careless. So we've got 4 boys, and and they're my life. And they're all cyclists. They all know how to ride a bike.
Yeah, well, you wrote an entire book about biking across Canada with them, so I think you've showed them some pretty cool stuff.
It's up to them to do what they want with the rest of their lives. I just want them to be happy. And now that my health is back and holding, I'm trying to think of ways to get the younger boys, because they haven't had that big adventure yet on bike. They've had a lot of smaller ones, and that may be the way it goes, like biking out to the pumpkin patch and riding them out to the coast. And we ride to school, and we ride in the neighborhood, and we ride the Springwater corridor, and they're on bikes a lot. My friend Maddie Carlson, the woman who cycles and writes Family Ride and everything else, she has 2 sons the same age. So we do a lot of sort of family biking with the kids. And that may be the extent of it for now, but I am still jonesing, Mason, because you don't lose the desire, even as things change in your life. When you've done 250,000 miles of biking around the globe, there's always that next road trip on the back of your mind. So, I'm looking at opportunities for the future. Summers probably to get one or both of the boys out on a longer trip.
So have you been able to build your career back up to a sustainable point? And you did say you've taken a a role as executive director? Is that a paying position?
That's a paying position. So right now, I'm doing speaking gigs in San Diego and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Seattle, and those pay well because people know what they're getting, and Mason, this is not some ego thing, but they get a cover charge at the door to come see me, which, I tell them, hey, if you didn't get dinner with us, you got screwed. Come on in.
There you go.
I have a lot of fun, and people have a lot of fun with it. And so, I could have just kept that side of things going and built it back up and done fine. And I'm still doing all of that. But the executive director position was more of, hey, I do need something steady right now as I build up. But more than that, it's a legacy building. I didn't need to take the job. I wanted to take the job because although Portland is very, very bike friendly and very built up over the last 20 years, we've really done a lot of work here to make that happen. And I played a role in that as well. These guys recruited me because they knew I played a role in that and wanted to see if I could do the same on the west side, where it's very rural, suburban, and exurb. So it's a lot of more challenges to try and come into a very car-centric sort of demographic and layout and try and bring bike infrastructure, safety, and culture. And so it's a damn big challenge, but send in the Irish, we're cheaper than arrows. I'm in, and I'm battling a good fight, and I'm having fun with it. We'll see where it goes. I'm fine. I'm doing fine, and I never wanted for much, Mason. I'm not, you're never going to see me chasing after the latest fashion or car or gadget unless it's on a bike.
Yeah.
So, people ask me where my armada of bikes are, and I said, well, I've given some of them away. I've traded some off. I've auctioned some off for charities, so I only have maybe 3 or 4 bikes. And because I believe in a bike ought to be rode. If it's not ridden, it's not serving any purpose.
Yeah, there you go. They were made to be ridden, that's for sure.
Nothing sadder than a bike sitting in a garage.
Oh man, true Metal Cowboy quote right there. Yeah. So what should we be expecting from the Metal Cowboy in the next few years? Any more books coming out?
There you go. There's more books. There's more projects. The latest book is a departure for me, but it's also not. I'll explain that. It's about a cycling Amazonian warrior woman from 1906. She lived from 1906 to 2005. She was, she lived, loved, and rode on her own terms. She was an equality pioneer, badass, and she was faster than the men. She set the sporting life record. This is all in Britain. She set the sporting life record, the half-mile sprint record. She went 1,000 miles in 84 hours of in-saddle riding. Wasn't broken for 5 decades, man or woman.
Wow.
She was a monster in the saddle, an effervescent person out of the saddle, and she just pleasantly and with purpose went about trying to get herself to be allowed to race against the men in the Tour de France, to the point where the newsreels covered her, the Queen of England came out, and the Prime Minister and the head of labor shot off the gun when she set these records. She went from the lowest point in the UK to the highest point in Wales and back in 7 days. She was amazing, and they still wouldn't let her race. Kept all the records for the women unofficial. It's very much a story of how the patriarchal system and the button-down England wouldn't face, they were afraid to let a woman ride. And today they're still afraid to let women ride in the Tour de France. And so that would be enough story right there, Mason. Then it takes it goes from the female Jackie Robinson of the bike world, where she was the first spokesperson for wind trainers, for recumbents. She had a whole career as a stunt double and a faraway shot in Gracie Field's movies. So she had a whole movie career. She was the godmother of cyclocross in Europe. She started cyclocrossing for women. All of this would be an amazing story. She toured and went 10,000 miles in 93 days. But in the end, Mason, it turns into Inglourious Bastards because she becomes a bona fide spy and hero and a Lorraine Cross, a medal winner from de Gaulle in World War II. She goes in Glorious Bastards, and she's a Nazi fighter. And it's an amazing story. And the story is called Lightning in a Saddle, The Long Untamed Life of Evelyn Hamilton. It's legacy work for me. It's the piece of me that I'm really super proud of the project. I'm super proud of the way the book has turned out, and it'll be out in a few months.
Oh, I was going to say, when do you expect this to be out?
I'll tell you what, people can, I'm not going to whore the brand, but I'm just about to, so let's rock with it. You can go to metalcowboy.com/shop, or just go to metalcowboy.com, and you can pre-order it, and you'll get it in two ways. You'll get it as a PDF very shortly, and then you'll get it as the paper book, the real world book for the price of the one order. So we're giving anybody who pre-orders it two different ways. And I'll be on a national book tour. And when I say a book tour, I'm not going to sit there and read from the book. You're going to get slides, and it's amazing. This woman didn't even have her own Wikipedia page, and now she's going to be inducted in 2020 into the British Cycling Hall of Fame. She had been completely overlooked. Imagine overlooking Gino Bartoli, or politically or war hero-wise, Grant or Sherman or Abraham Lincoln. This woman was that big in the equality pioneer. She'd be right up there with Susan B. Anthony, but she was overlooked. And so I look at it this way, Mason. I've been able to help bring Evelyn Hamilton the last 100 yards across the finish line of history. I'm quite moved that I've stuck around long enough to do it. And when I say stuck around, I plan to stick around another 40, 50 years, Mason, but this was a bump in the road, and you never know whether you're going to be here tomorrow. So I'm just glad that the book is done. It's not, too many times people look at history as something that already happened. I look at it as a roadmap for how we might behave and act and choices we might make in the future. And given our current political climate, there is no better time and place for this book about equality and humanity and letting us all have an even playing field than right now, because we're living the same things that Evelyn had to deal with 100 years ago.
If you want to get into backpacking but you're not sure where to start, go check out campcrate.net. Camp Crate can help you plan the backpacking trip of a lifetime and supply you with all the rental gear you need. Simply go online and choose your gear and your itinerary. Camp Crate will then ship your gear anywhere in the U.S. When your trip is finished, use the pre-printed return label to ship the gear back. It's that easy. Camp Crate. Rent, explore, return.
How did you rediscover her story? Obviously, it's not hard to see why it inspired you to write the book, but where did you come across it and started reading more about her?
That's a great question. I was doing a piece for a magazine article, and I just happened to be on a website, the University of Toronto, happened to be looking up emancipated cycling people, and it had nothing to do with Evelyn Hamilton, or I didn't think it did, but I saw this picture, and I talk about it in the book. I found this picture. No, it might as well have been on a floor of an attic. All it said was 1925. And it had Evelyn leaning over, sitting against her bicycle right off the saddle, looking at a map with a tree behind her in daylight, and looking like she had all the time in the world and all the miles left in her legs. The thing was, Mason, she didn't look at all like she was from the 1920s. She looked like she was in bike shorts and a wool jersey, and all of it, she looked like she was from 2005. And I thought, wow, this one looks like a time traveler. And I pulled the picture down, and I vowed that I would find out more about her. And then I got diagnosed with hemochromatosis, and then I dove into writing it. And it took me face recognition software from a buddy of mine at Intel to be able to track down who this woman was, because there was just nothing based on a picture. I didn't have a name. I didn't have anything. It was interesting because she had 7 different iterations of her name. She was Evelyn with an E, Evelyn with a Y. She was Alice Baylis. She was Hamilton. She was Gladys was her nickname all over the British newsreels. So she was called Jane at one point. and she took on an assumed name of a dead bistro owner in World War II. And then she married in World War II a war lover, and so she had the name Helson as a last name hyphen. So she had all these names. And once I got the face recognition to match up all over the web, it was astounding how much information. It was all off to the four corners and the winds, Mason, but it was there. And I just had to pull it together. I pulled it together from Secret Service redacted British information. I've got birth records and death records, interviews, Ancestry.com, emailing, people, characters in the stories, relatives and descendants. And I went on a worldwide literary treasure hunt, and this is what it produced.
Wow. Now I'm really excited to read it. I bet there were times and times again you just were blown away that this woman wasn't more known, because I've never heard of her. And everything you've said is completely movie-worthy, if not, at the very least, book-worthy.
Exactly. And it's been optioned as a movie. I wrote a screenplay before I finished the book, because with a screenplay, it's inspired by true events. With a book, you have to dot all the I's, and so I was able to write the screenplay in tandem, but finish it before the book. And at any rate, everybody should go, that's listening to this, should go to evelynhamilton.org, EVELYN, Hamilton, just like it sounds, HAMILTON. Is that right? Yeah, I'm just spelling it out loud. .org, evelynhamilton.org, and you'll be able to actually see video. There was archive. There was all these Plath newsreels, Mason, of her. I mean, you can hear her speak, and you can see her time trialing behind a motorcyclist, getting ready to set her records, and you can see her doing her cyclocross that she organized for 200 women. And the reason she did that was to try and move the organizers of the Tour de France to say, look, not only is she faster on road, but she's faster in snow and rain and hills and dirt, and still, crickets. So it's a hell of a story, evelynhamilton.org. And what's great is, as I'm telling the story, the more and more unbelievable it seems. I've got private collection photos and postcards and these newsreels. So you see that she's not just a picture on an attic floor, but a whole life here, and an amazing one.
So that's what's next for you. And obviously you are working to get bike culture into West Portland, is that right?
Yeah, West Side.
West Side.
Yes, the West Side, they call it. It's a 16-city county. It's the second largest county in Oregon. And there's a lot of great things happening out there politically and infrastructure-wise, but there's also a contingent of people that drive around with bumper stickers that say one less bike. So, some days you do feel like Jon Snow on the wall. And, you got to be a happy warrior, Mason, because in this world, you lay down or you get up. And the trouble is that you think you have more time. And I know for certain that I have only the time I have right now, and I am living it out loud and grateful and with plenty of humility, but a lot of humor and a lot of sincerity. I always tried to live that way, but definitely a wake-up call to see if I can push that envelope even more.
I totally agree with you. I won't get too into it, but I went through a pretty tough time a few years ago with depression, and I'd say my gratefulness for every day is exponentially higher than it was before.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Mason, and not to make this a whole health crisis interview, but the drugs they put me on really allowed me to understand what anxiety and depression, because it boomeranged, because they were introduced into my system. And between the illness and the drugs, I was down, and so now that I'm back, I have a deeper appreciation for what it means to struggle day in and day out with anxiety and depression and just other forms of physical and emotional challenges, I'll say. And so we go through our lives thinking we're more invincible and less fragile than we are. And maybe that's a defense mechanism, but we don't have to be. Kindness does not have to be thought of as weakness. And so, I would much rather sing the song of kindness as my verse that I contribute to this world in all directions. But I choose, with no illusions, Mason, I choose to sing kindness. And I sing it because it's the way to stay human.
I agree. And you said something interesting. You're not as tough as you think you are, but when something that drastic happens to you, it humbles you, but it reinforces that the softness in you to a tough level. I realize that I'm a lot more fragile than I thought I was, but forces me to want to increase my kindness and increase that gratitude. So it's the things that I thought were soft before are now the things that I hold on to as strong as possible. And the things that I thought were as solid before, now I can kind of let wash away and realize that's okay.
I love that line. There's a line that goes, what do we say to death? We say, not today. And every day I get up and I do feel, I pulled I pulled 2 kids and my dad's ashes across America, and just 18 wheels of kids and bikes and lightsabers and diapers and fishing gear across Canada. I'm hard like a diamond and I'm strong as hell, but we're all going to go someday, and we're only as strong as today. So those things you cannot make those your being. You've got to make connections and kindness and the outward acts of kindness your religion if you want to really live fully. That's my belief. And also my other religion is laughter. I just love the absurdity of life. If you can't poke fun at yourself and just have a good laugh with folks, it's for naught. I'll tell you one story before I go that isn't
please.
in any books, but it's going to be in a book called Sweet Tea Existentialism. It's all about my childhood rides in the South. It's called Riding Down the Rebel Roads and up the backwoods bayous of my childhood. Sweet Tea Existentialism. And I've had a great time, and I had an opportunity when I was writing for Bicycling Magazine and Men's Journal and Outside. I had an opportunity to do a column called 10 Things About the Bike. Different contributors would write that column. And I got the call that I was going to be interviewing Robin Williams. And this was a dream come true for me because, one humorist to a god of humor, it was like a Make-A-Wish Foundation gift to me, Mason. So I got 30 minutes on the phone. That was what I was told. 30 minutes, Robin Williams, you're on. And so I got on the phone with him, and the first thing I did was I tell him we'd already met, or at least part of us had met. I said, yeah, I was 19 years old. I was in the toy boat store, ice cream shop in San Francisco, and this, I don't know, it looked like a hairy South American spider walked across the counter and picked up a napkin. And it was your hand, Robin. It was your right hand. And it was just so hairy and moving. I thought of a spider. And Robin Williams on the other end of the phone, we haven't spoken yet. He says, well, I'll tell you, Joe, I'm real acquainted with my right hand.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my God.
And at that point, we were off and running, Mason. We were just, it was a 2-man back and forth rat-a-tat-tat of humor, and I was having my Make-A-Wish moment. I was on a stage with an empty auditorium performing with Robin Williams. So, it gets to be about minute 22. Well, here's the kicker of the story, Mason. It gets to be about minute 22, and I realize, holy crap, I haven't done my job. I've probably got 3 of the 10 questions out of him. And so I kick into high gear, and I say to him, listen, Rob, when I wrote Metal Cowboy, I thought of my adventures as being a traveler, not a tourist. And there was a long pause on the other end of the phone, Mason, and he says, wait, you wrote Metal Cowboy? And at that moment, it went from the Robin Williams we all know on TV and on stage and in Mork and Mindy and all that Robin Williams guy that's on and and over the top, to just a Robin Williams that would be, I can only equate it to two guys sitting on a stoop, just having a conversation like old buddies, just guys that liked bikes and liked to make people laugh. And at that moment, he stayed on the phone for another 30 minutes, and we just had a great time, but we weren't on, we were just people. And I asked him, the last question I asked him, I said, so Robin, what has the bike done for your life? And he said, well, I'll tell you, Joe, the bike has extended my life. And like any good journalist, you can turn it around. If you put words into their mouth and they say yes, so you can massage a quote to make it sound better. And so I said, so what you're saying, Robin, is that the bike saved your life. And he did that Good Morning Vietnam. No, 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 no. No, Joe. That's not what I'm saying. He said, because nothing in this world can save your life. Because life is not meant to be saved, Joe. It's meant to be spent. And what you and I have to ask ourselves is how we're going to spend the rest of ours.
Wow. And
I got to tell you, Mason, that was a Goodwill Hunting moment. I was a poor man's Matt Damon.
Yeah.
And I tell you, when I got off the phone with him, I sat there, I was a little shaky and a little verklempt, because it moved me. Even then, before my illness, before we lost him, it moved me to think about what I'd do with the rest of mine. And I got an object lesson and a lot of time to think about that in the last year and a half. Over the last 6 months, I've been doing just what I want to do with the time that remains. And, whether it makes a difference or not, I feel like it's made a difference for me and hopefully for the people around me.
Yeah, you've got another chance at this, and keep riding into that sunset.
Oh yeah, I look at it this way. I got a lot of other ways to make it go wrong. So hey, I'm glad to have the shot at it. So as long as I'm doing it on a bicycle and bringing people stories from the road, filling the space with some laughter and some kindness, giddy up.
Great. Joe, thanks so much for joining us today, man. And I think you already let people know how they can read more about your works, but if you want to drop that again real quick, that'd be great.
Sure. metalcowboy.com, www, because for some reason it doesn't work without the W's, metalcowboy.com and evelynhamilton.org. You can really learn about all kinds of stuff about my disorder that you can learn more about, iron overload. You can learn about Evelyn Hamilton. And you can get some of my books. There'll be Friends of the Cowboy priced over there. Don't give Jeff Bezos any more money. Come on over to Metal Cowboy.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos he's going to be fine. Yeah, let's help Joe out.
Yeah, don't worry about him.
Man, I'm really looking forward to the book.
Hey, thank you so much. And Mason, you keep riding and enjoying it, getting shows like this out to the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe.
All right, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and be sure to tell all your friends about the show. Everybody deserves a little adventure. Until the next episode, get out there and try something new.